To understand what is going on in your country, you will need to understand as much as possible about the most powerful people in your country. Indeed, if you're successful, it'll even be easy to predict what they're going to do next. It'll be very easy to predict the decisions they'll make on developing issues. That is why we emphasize so much on history on this channel. How can you understand somebody without even knowing their history? How? Or at the very least, as much of their history as you can manage to know. Now, some people are very quick to dismiss Internal Security CS, Fred Matiangi. Some even like to make jokes. But there are also quite a number of people in Kenya who consider Fred Matiangi a serious, prospective presidential candidate for 2022. Well, wherever you stand on this issue, there's something that you cannot change. And that is the fact that apart from the president, Dr. Fred Matiangi is the most powerful Kenyan in the country at the moment. And this was cemented in early 2019 when the president gave Dr. Matiangi the added responsibility of supervising cabinet. Some analysts have repeatedly said that this has effectively made Dr. Matiangi Prime Minister de facto. I don't agree. And in my humble view, before anybody makes a sweeping statement, they need to understand what is happening and why it happened. And indeed, in this case, many Kenyans guessed correctly the reason behind this decision that shocked many Kenyans. At the time, early 2019, there was a problem. As the rift between the president and his deputy raged, the deputy president was contacting cabinet secretaries, was interacting with cabinet secretaries. He was even occasionally summoning some of them for meetings at his official current residence. But I guess the most sensitive part of it all is that he was using information from these cabinet secretaries in his meetings, some would say campaign meetings for 2022. The government has done this, the government has done that, the government has spent so much or is planning to spend so much on this project in this area. In this particular constituency, after the appointment of Dr. Matiangi to supervise cabinet, that ended. I'm sure you've noticed. I believe the main objective here was that the internal CS became a gatekeeper for information. The most glaring evidence to prove this was when the COVID-19 crisis emerged and the deputy president had a solo press conference, not flanked or accompanied by any of the other known government officials linked to the task force on the virus. The Nation headline on this particular story, I believe, was very telling. It read, "Ruto presser leaves Kenyans puzzled." Bottom line, as powerful as Matiangi is, a gatekeeper can never be a prime minister. But admittedly, when you're controlling the flow of information in any political situation, you're powerful. Extremely powerful. There's no doubt about that. Now, let us start by understanding how Bwana Matiangi climbed from a very insignificant or relatively insignificant cabinet portfolio to the power he wields today. Bwana Matiangi joined cabinet under the portfolio of ICT, Information and Communications Technology, a very key and critical portfolio in this Jubilee administration, but not a powerful one. And Kenyans really got to notice Matiangi in mid-2015 when he was appointed CS, Education. A very visible ministry then, with all the sweeping changes that were being made in our education sector. However, still not powerful. However, in retrospect, it was a very useful stepping ladder for Matiangi because it popularized him with many Kenyans. It was very clear that education was very close to the heart of the CS. Hardly surprising, because it is said that Matiangi was once a primary school teacher, but then later he also became a lecturer at both Egerton University and the University of Nairobi. He was a lecturer in the Department of Literature. Bottom line, he understood the sector very well and the problems facing the sector, and therefore it was very easy for him to endear himself to parents. And of course, most Kenyans are parents. Now, everything changed on 7th July 2017. The then Interior CS, the late Joseph Nkaiseri, suddenly passed on, and Matiangi was appointed immediately in an acting capacity. And in January 2018, he was confirmed to the position. It is also worth noting that all this time, he was handling two cabinet portfolios at the same time. He remained the cabinet secretary for education, as well as taking up acting cabinet secretary for interior. For us to understand how this appointment to the interior docket elevated Fred Matiangi so dramatically, so quickly, it is important that we understand why the interior docket does that to people, makes them extremely powerful. And to do that effectively, we need to go back in time. You will remember that the Mwai Kibaki administration had an extremely shaky start. And initially, the relationship between the Mwai Kibaki administration and the then retired President Daniel Arap Moi was not good. In fact, it was tense. And at one point, the retired president complained that he was being followed around by what appeared to be intelligence officers. I'm sure some of you remember that. And at some point, President Kibaki started seeking the counsel of retired President Daniel Arap Moi, and their relationship changed very dramatically. But something else happened that is relevant to what we're discussing today. At the same time, the Mwai Kibaki government very suddenly and very dramatically stabilized, which means President Moi's advice worked, and it worked fast. Now, the question is, where precisely did President Moi point President Kibaki to? Which particular area of government? Answer: provincial administration. Now. Those who were around during the Second Liberation, when people were trying to remove Moi from power, will be laughing loudly around now. Why? Because this was a key area of President Kibaki's campaign. Meeting after meeting promised Kenyans that once Kibaki gets into power, once the NAC government, National Rainbow Coalition government, gets into power, the first thing they would do would be to abolish, get rid of provincial administration. The provincial administration system used to date by the government was inherited from the colonial government. It is tried and tested, but it is repressive. It was very unpopular with Kenyans. Let me give you a few examples. In those days, in the Moi days, the president would be visiting a certain area for fundraiser. And therefore the president's handlers would harass the provincial administration to ensure that enough funds were raised, so as not to embarrass the president, the Republic of Kenya. What that meant is that chiefs would walk into Homestead and ask for a contribution, actually demand for a contribution. And in many instances, the poverty-stricken rural folk would not have the money to make the contribution. And therefore the chief would grab a chicken or a goat, a precious chicken or a goat from that homestead. And there was nothing anybody could do about that. The Moi government perfected the art of micromanaging everything happening within the borders of Kenya by using the provincial administration. Because the provincial administration started from the provincial commissioner, PC in those days. It trickled down to DCs, right down to chiefs in sublocations. Another example, an order would come, from above, indicating no meetings, no rallies by people opposed to Moi's government, the opposition. Any planned rally would need to seek permission in writing. And there was no guarantee that that permission would be granted. In fact, more often than not, it was not granted. And the same provincial administration enforced that decision that no meeting would take place. And therefore, if anybody brave enough attempted to do anything, the meeting would be broken up, people arrested, people detained. And what made this provincial administration even more repressive, were Moi's management skills, which were out of this world. It is said that he kept a small black notebook with all kinds of telephone numbers. A chief's telephone number, a DC's telephone number, an individual on the ground somewhere in Kenya, their telephone number. And so a PC, provincial commissioner, would be contacted by the president. And they would tell the president everything on the ground was okay. There was no problem. And then the president would surprise that PC by telling them, I've spoken to somebody on the ground. They're telling me this and that, which completely contradicts what you're telling me. And of course, this information would take that PC completely by surprise. And they'd get worried because they have to keep their job. And so if they were not worried before, now they would be paranoid. They would go right down to chiefs, harassing everybody in their path. They would do everything and anything to remain on top of the situation and to make sure that the president would never again spring a surprise on them. And so, at the height of the second liberation and the fight to remove Moi and Kanu from power, Kenyans had become completely fed up with the provincial administration. And therefore, in any opposition rally, you would be sure that the issue of provincial administration would come up. that one you'd bet on. The issue of the provincial administration featured prominently in the drafting of the constitution. And the message was clear. Kenyans did not want it. There are many Kenyans, after the 2010 constitution was passed, they confirmed and reconfirmed that the provincial administration was nowhere in the 2010 constitution, and then went out and celebrated for days on end. That's the reality. And based on the actions of President Kibaki early on in his administration, he was in complete agreement. He was going to deliver this promise to Kenyans. Make the provincial administration disappear forever. But here is the important lesson to take away. When you want to replace something, even if it is something very bad, you need to come up with a viable replacement. Because in most cases, you will brutally get rid of it, that bad thing, and then suddenly you'll find that things are not working. The other day, somebody asked me a question. They didn't understand. They asked me a question. Chris, I want to understand. You said that Kenya can't do without corruption. What did you mean? And in our case today, you can paraphrase that and say, Kenya can't do without provincial administration. What do I mean? Let me give you an example, a simple one. I went to a high school where bullying was rampant, and there was a hierarchy system. If you're in Form 1, you respected Form 2s. Form 2s were your bosses, and therefore they could bully you. And Form 3s were bosses of Form 2s, and so on and so forth, until 6th form. Now, that system was evil. It was evil because people took advantage of it, and bullied their juniors. Sometimes you'd find that there's a 4th former waiting to sit the exams, but there's a 5th former making their lives hell on earth or in school. And naturally, that would affect their performance in their critical exams, Form 4 exams in those days. And because that was the system in the school, for decades, there was absolutely nothing that 4th former could do to get himself out of that situation. Now, some years later, after I'd left that school, a new headmaster came and completely destroyed the system the school had used for decades. Guess what happened next? Riots in the school, which had previously been unheard of. Chaos. The school performance in national exams dropped very dramatically. They moved from being a top performer to the tail end in every result. And that was especially sad because this headmaster had done a good thing. He had gotten rid of something evil. But the big blunder is that they replaced it with nothing, or whatever they replaced it with was not viable. It didn't work. President Julius Nyerere, the founder of the Tanzanian nation, was a genius. And it will take many years for people to realize just how much of a genius he was. Because he introduced the Bakumi System. Every 10 households right across the country have a leader who reports directly to the government. They give information. So if in a neighborhood a suspicious person moves in, the leader of those 10 households reports to the government. This is one of the main reasons why terror groups and their cells have found it impossible to penetrate into Tanzania. Moments after you land in an area, the government is aware. Now, the way the system works is that the Nyumbakumi leaders do not enforce anything. Their work is mainly information. And that's the reason why the very huge country of Tanzania, it's bigger than the other two East African countries, Uganda and Kenya. In fact, if you put Uganda and Kenya together in land area, that's when you come close to the land area of Tanzania. Still, Tanzania has had the lowest crime rate, still has the lowest crime rate of the three East African countries. My point is, Nyerere replaced provincial administration with the Nyumbakumi system. And it works. But in Kenya we have a problem. Because one of the arguments, a very valid argument, against the provincial administration is that Kenyans were asking, how is it possible that a leader who is not elected has such a big influence on my daily life? Much more than my elected leaders. That can never be constitutional. Even as we speak, in any rural area in Kenya, people don't fear the county government. People have issues with the provincial administration, which is now the county administration, the government county administration. Now, all this information explains the actions of President Kibaki in May 2012, when he appointed, controversially, 47 county commissioners. And many people questioned how constitutional this was, because they said these county commissioners will touch on the powers of the governors elected directly by the people. The Kibaki government answered that their function is really to be a liaison, play a liaison role between the national and county governments. Now, what is super interesting here is that the 17th section of the 6th schedule of the transitional clause, for the new constitution, transiting from the old to the new constitution, 2010 constitution, stated that the government had been given 5 years to restructure the provincial administration to fit in a devolved system of government. Let me just stop there, because I think you've gotten the gist of what I'm saying. So back to what we're discussing. The internal docket is extremely powerful because it controls the provincial administration, which is now the county administration. It is powerful because it micromanages the entire country. In other words, the old provincial administration that Kenyans fought so hard against, that Kenyans did not want, is still very much alive and kicking. Now, I want us to take a few minutes to listen to a clip where Fred Matiangi is speaking before the Parliamentary Committee on Security. Just listen. I'll be back very shortly.
We are not in these jobs to be popular. We are here to do the right thing, and I will do the right thing. We must sort this thing out. Honorable members, hapa lazima tukubaliane. We have to sort this thing out. So, Golosh, I am sorting it out. That's what we are trying to do. I wish this gentleman was cooperative in the manner in which the facts are clear to him. And as I told you, Mr. Chairman, I will bring the file to you so that you peruse it yourself and see what we are talking about. It is not right that when we are trying to make a genuine effort, we are being called lords of impunity, that we are making the wrong mistakes and so on and so forth. None of these, even our colleagues in the media who are reporting this matter, none of them has gone through the facts that we are putting before them. None of them has asked the very basic questions. Now, I want to see what the Law Society of Kenya is going to do, and the judiciary, now that the officers have actually lied on oath, filed affidavits in court lying. As for the relations between us and the judiciary, I want to say this. We are in a unique place, and you, more than any members of parliament, because you are the security committee, need to know this. Our sector is the one that is affected most by some of the decisions that are made when they are not balanced. Why are we so bothered about the checks The Constitution expects us to uphold checks and balances. Why are we not bothered about the balances? A clique of judicial officers, that's why I would not say, I would be very honest and say, this is not about the judiciary. It is about a clique of judicial officers who have gotten into an unholy relationship with a clique of activist lawyers and oppositionist civil society people, with the intention of humiliating the government, stalling the government, embarrassing the government, and making it impossible for the government to perform. I want to give you data. You tell me yourselves as members of parliament. When I came here before, I told you, on the crackdown on illegal machines, gambling, you are the ones who represent the people of Kenya, the children of Kenya. You know what this nonsense has done to our children in the villages. I have over 26 court orders, served all over the place. No judge, no magistrate is calm enough to say, go serve PS Kibicho, come before me, so that you argue your case. On crackdown on illicit brews, I don't know how many court orders. I've stopped the count. Served on county commissioners, regional commissioners, chiefs, everybody. You can actually sell poison in this country because all you need is to go to court and get a court order and put it on your door and sell poison in this country. And no one says, go serve the PS, let us listen, let us hear the two of you so that we understand what the truth is. That's what I'm saying. It's a clique of judicial officers. It's not about the judiciary. Our judiciary has got some of the finest people in the country. There's a clique in the judiciary that has been captured by a group of people in civil society and a clique of activist lawyers. And they are riding roughshod. Have you wondered, members of parliament, because you have the burden of leadership, have you wondered, in the last 3 years, one civil society activist in Kenya has obtained nearly 30 court orders, ex parte, 30 court orders, ex parte, from the court. He walks in, he gets an order, comes out. He walks in, he gets an order, comes out. In fact, he could even walk in today and say he wants an order so that all cabinet secretaries commit suicide. You'll get the order. He walks in, gets an order, comes out. What does that say about our judicial system? Last Wednesday, the whole day, the Attorney General spent time begging for one thing, to be heard. If we had been heard by that judicial officer, they would have been told what we are telling you. Mr. Miguna is on the air side. He is not in the custody of Boynet. Boynet cannot produce him because he doesn't have him. The director of immigration would have said, this guy is not held. This would have been said. Then the judicial officer proceeds to make a 36-page ruling. Just ask yourself, a 36-page ruling in 20 minutes, even if you are a paragon, isn't that evidence that there's collusion going on elsewhere and things are being brought to the judicial system to try and stall this? And then he says, when the judicial officer orders that we go to court, he says, let them come, but I will not hear them. What does that mean? Where do you want us? You want us for humiliation parade so that you can drag us by the collar through the street of public opinion. It's not an interest to resolve issues. How can you be condemned and heard? As I told you, this is not a story. Somebody should show me, this is the affidavit of service that shows that you were served a court order. This is what's happening. There is an evil clique of judicial officers working with activist lawyers and elements in the civil society who are determined to make sure that the executive branch does not function. And they will issue order after order after order after order. You cannot move. And you know, look, you are the security committee. If Boynet receives an anticipatory order, you know, you prepare to commit a crime, then you go to court and come up with an anticipatory order. We are hearing it's an invention in Kenya's judicial system, an anticipatory order. So you can't be arrested. So you go, get the order, and arrive here, and go and break into Honorable Mujiri's house. You have an order. You anticipated that you're going to make a mistake. You cannot be arrested. And let me tell you, at a personal level, and this should be on the record, I am in Parliament. I witnessed this when I was in the Ministry of Education. Until Justice Mumbi Ngugi saved us in the education sector, we had about 30-something court orders served left, right, and center. You can't have a school board, you can't have what? On the basis of a letter, honorable members, a letter, a piece of paper that was signed by the late Mutula Kilonzo, given to an individual who purported to represent all parents. And he walked around the country collecting money. He has orders in Machakos, orders in Kakamega, orders wherever, Garissa, nothing moves. So, I don't know what you can do, and I can't prescribe, because you are as much government as we are. We are equal, we are at bar. So I can't direct you, I can't command parliament, I can't do anything. All I can do as a member of the executive branch is present the reality and inform you as it is. And you, more than anyone else in the security sector, to look into this and see how best this will facilitate or inhibit the management of security in the country.
Now you understand the power of the man. Without me even going into the very controversial issue of court orders that are ignored by the government, without me doing that, you fully understand what we're talking about here, I'm sure. Now, there's an area of great concern. You see, provincial administration, county administration has a lot to do with intelligence, secrets, information that is highly sensitive. And that makes the holder of this office even more powerful, but also vulnerable. What it means is that you cannot just fire your internal CS. No way. Not in the same way you can fire any other CS in government. As an administration, you'll be forced to go into extraordinary measures to ensure that when that person leaves office, and in case that person leaves office after a disagreement, you'll have to ensure that they do not leak sensitive secrets that they're privy to. And that one makes the holder of this office even more powerful. What I am saying is that in case you're in cabinet and you have a quarrel with the internal CS, you can be very sure that you're the one who's going to be fired first, long before the internal CS is fired, or even moved to another docket. And indeed, historically, there have been extremely few changes to the internal minister or internal CS. Since independence, I believe a change has only been made twice in the last over 50 years. And I believe one of them involved Chris Murungaro in the Kibaki administration. He was removed over some scandal. Bottom line, if you did not believe just how powerful Fred Matiangi is, I believe now you do. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.